Amen. And last, I appreciate Brother Giesbrecht inviting me to do this. I appreciate it, and then I don't know whether I do or not. But the only thing is, I know it needs to be done. And these testimonies are just simply given. The only reason I'm giving them is because it can encourage somebody. That's the only reason, otherwise I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't think it was necessary. But it is good to pass on what God does for us. Because I believe that when God does something for us, He's always doing something for us. If we tell others about it, He's going to do more for us. Yes. And I've found in my years that God has been so good, and there's been a lot of miracles that have happened. And I didn't expect the miracles. They just happened. And I think in your lives, there's some of you here tonight that have experienced the miracles of God. Lots of them, no doubt. Now, I started last Sunday about my broken hip that brought me home from Togo, West Africa. And this was the scripture that came to me when I was laying on that floor in Lomé, Togo, alone in the house, and not knowing how to get the door open or how to get out at all or get word to somebody, because the missionaries had gone to another country to do service. And there I was for 3 or 4 days. So there was only one I could depend on, and that was God. And God gave me this scripture. And I will go over it again because I love this scripture. And, you know, it's just wonderful if we just give it to God. All these circumstances that come in our life, and they do, they just come. And some are good and some don't make us feel so good. But if we just give it to God, and God works it out some way, somehow. In Romans 8:28, and I just want to read it out of the Bible. I love this Bible because it gives peace, it gives strength, it gives everything we need. And we know that all things, not some things, all things, work together for good to them that love God and to them who are called according to His purpose. What a promise we have. What a beautiful promise. That means in any circumstance. Excuse me. Now, I wish to tell you some of the details of the experience, excuse me, that I talked about last Sunday. And Brother and Sister Adams, Brother Adams was the superintendent of the work in Togo, Benin, Central African Republic, and some other French countries in West Africa. And it's interesting to know that Brother Adams was a civil engineer and doing well, of course, Mississippi, and God called him into the ministry and to be a missionary. Isn't that wonderful? That's awesome. God calls all walks of life, of course. And what happened here was that when I was taken to the St. Joseph's Hospital in Lomé, you know, the hospital was as clean, so clean. The nurses in starched uniforms, white starched uniforms, the doctors in white starched suits, and just Right, great. The only thing was that there was no food supplied. So Sister Adams had to bring all my food. And she had to bathe me. They supplied the medication and whatever, but otherwise, that's what happened. So that's the responsibility they had for me. And then, not only that, but they had to try to communicate with our headquarters in St. Louis, and so many ways in order to get help. Now, they could have done the surgery there, but I wouldn't have lived through it, I know that. I think they did too. And so, that was some of the things that happened. And so, I wasn't very hungry, so all I asked for, I just wanted hard-boiled eggs with salt and pepper. And I think I must have ate that the whole time. And I don't remember what I drank. Of course, I was so filled up with morphine, I didn't know too much. But anyhow, one day when Sister Adams was going to come over to see me in the morning, of course she was going to bring my eggs and whatnot. And so Semerand was the French translator, and who but worked in a building close to the Adams home. And also the driver, Brother Francois, they wanted to visit me in the hospital. So they didn't tell Sister Adams anything, and they opened the gate for her because they thought she was going to school to teach, to the Bible school to teach. Opened the gate. Sister Adams drove out, closed the gate, and they quickly got on the motorcycle and headed for the hospital. And when they got to the hospital, they met Sister Adams coming up the steps. And of course they were just mortified because they were supposed to be watching the house. They were supposed to be guarding the house. So I thought that was quite, that was comical. And so anyway, she allowed them to come in and see me, and then they went. Now, while I was there, I was laying on my back. And of course, I laid on my back from November the 6th, when I broke my hip, until November the 16th, when I had my surgery. Of course, I couldn't turn either way. I had to be on my back. So you know the results of that. There's no air conditioning in the hospital, and so I had bed sores, all kinds of bed sores. And it got so bad in Lomé that, you know, you're never to put cotton on a bed sore. Never. Nothing of any kind like that. But I was so sore that I said to the nurse, I said, please, just put cotton there, because I couldn't stand it any longer and I couldn't lay on either side. And so she put cotton there, stuffed me good with cotton. And it was comfortable, but that was a big problem. So, at the same time, now I'm only telling you all of this to tell you how how great God is and what He can do. And what He allows.
Yes.
What He allows is wonderful, because sometimes we think, God, you know, what is this? But no, we can't ask God why. We never ask God why in any circumstance we get into. We just trust Him that He knows and He knows what He's doing.
That's right.
So we just trust Him.
Yes.
And Lord, lead me, tell me which way.
Yes.
And so here I was with all these bed sores and whatnot, and the cotton and everything. And then not only that, but I had, as I fell, and the impact when I bounced my feet against the wall, I bounced around and I hit the swivel chair, and something sharp on the swivel chair which caught the same leg around between the ankle and my knee. Well, this began to swell and swell and swell in the hospital, and I could see where I was laying that my leg looked dark red, almost dark, just almost blackish, and I thought, could this be that I'm going to lose my leg or something? And anyway, it swelled and swelled, and they didn't know what it was. The doctors couldn't figure out what that was. And so anyway, under the morphine, I didn't realize too much what I was doing at last, I guess. And it was bothering me a little, and I saw it just puffy, puffy. And so I just picked up my left leg, and I just let it drop on that thing on my right leg. Well, everything went, blood and pus and everything. I saw that just running down. And so, anyway, then it was shortly after that the plane came, and I was evacuated medevaced to Edmonton. I said earlier last Sunday it was 21 hours, but it was 22 hours. I found it in my notes during the week, 22 hours on the plane. And it was tight. It was a small plane, and there was the pilot, probably the co-pilot, and then I know there were the two nurses there. And as I lay in the stretcher, and I was strapped down well, and the two nurses, they had their knees right up against me, against the little cot that I was on, and right there, it was really, the care was wonderful. The care was wonderful. And the last place we came down was in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I remember they had gone off for some hamburgers, and they came in and they smelled so good, but I didn't want to eat it. So I told them they smelled so good. Sure, shall we get you one? No, I wasn't interested in hamburgers, but it smelled good anyway. So anyway, then got to the University Hospital in Alberta, and in Edmonton. Now there, they didn't know what that thing on my leg was. They still didn't know what it was. And it looked terrible. It just looked terrible. That's all there was to it. And so the doctor ordered a skin graft. And this Dr. Stiegelmeyer, he was the head orthopedic surgeon of the University of Alberta. God's hand was in it, and an excellent doctor. God's hand was in this thing, absolutely. And but he did not know what it was. And so they ordered a doctor to come in and do a skin graft. So when that specialist came and looked, he just looked at my leg and he said, "That's a blood clot." Okay, then they knew what it was. And so then they were treating me for that. From my ankle to below my knee, my leg was just a mess, plus the broken part. So the doctor, this was before my surgery even, Dr. Stiegelmeyer, the orthopedic doctor, he came, and in the early morning, when he was on his way to surgery, I would feel this blanket at my feet just lift a little bit. And then I saw the doctor lift, and then I'm sure he was trying to smell if there was gangrene. I'm positive that was the idea. He would smell, and then he would go. And then I really wake up and realize, yeah, somebody was there, because my blanket was moved over. Every morning, this is what happened. So then, finally, I had my surgery, and it was not the surgery that the hip that took the long time in the hospital and all. It was the blood clot, because I had to wait till it came down. Well, God was in it all. They convinced me, you cannot go back to Africa now. Just don't think about going back to Africa. Oh, I didn't say anything, of course. But in my mind, I was going back to Africa. And it was a good thing. I had a purpose. And so I think that helped in the healing too. So then I remember Brother Mason from British Columbia, Brother Francis Mason. He was a member of the Foreign Mission Board, and we call it Global Missions Board now. And he came with the biggest basket of flowers, real flowers, that I had ever seen. He came just carrying that big basket, and it was such a wintry day, because I could see out my window, I could see how cold and wintry and miserable it was out there. And here Brother Mason comes from that distance just to bring me flowers and greetings from the Foreign Mission Board, or the Global Mission Board we call it now. I never forgot that. And he was even perspiring, and I thought, oh, and it was not long after that he had a heart attack. So he was not even feeling well when he came himself to do that. I've never forgotten that. And what happened was that those flowers, I still have them. Not the live flowers, but my sister and her, niece, they went ahead and replaced every live flower for a dead one. The same kind of flower. Wasn't that beautiful?
Praise God. Yes.
I still have it.
Yes, yes.
And I still have the flowers that Brother and Sister Wirch sent too. Late brother, Pastor Wirch, and sister. And then there's another set from Brother Bruce Howell, our Foreign Missions Director. And those are memoirs of the goodness of God's people. Just precious people. And then I can't leave out my brother and sister-in-law, Dan Mena, Brother Dan Mena, and my sister Ingeborg. When I left the hospital, of course I couldn't come home. I had to stay somewhere. Well, their home has stairs up, stairs down, and on the level, that was the only place that I could go. That was all, because I couldn't go use the bedrooms upstairs or downstairs. And so, what they did, they made room in their living room so I could sleep and be there in the living room. And this was for 6 good months. Well, it was more than that. From the 16th of December, I was released to go to them. And I was there with them till about the middle of June. And there, besides me in the living room, of course, they had to entertain visiting preachers and evangelists and so forth. And there I was in their living room. So it was my family. I really appreciated what they did. And there's a group that I just want to mention their names here. Yes, and that isn't all. I might as well mention this too. In January before June, when I was discharged, I lost my hair. The front part and the back part. And I had to wear a wig for a while. And then finally in September of 2004, my hair grew enough that I could, it was okay. And, you know, God is great.
Yes.
God is great.
Yes.
He's greatly to be praised. And I just want to mention some names here before I stop that I really did appreciate. And that was Brother and Sister Adams in Missionaries and Superintendent in Togo. They were so precious. And Brother Bruce Howell, he's still our General Director of Global Missions, did everything they could to help. I'll tell you, there is not a finer church in this world. There just isn't. All the years, over 42 years, I have been, well over 42 years now, I have been in connection with our people. They have Foreign Missions, Global Missions Division, and they are just precious. Every time I'm in contact, they will say, now if there's anything I can do for you, just let us know. I mean, what more could you ask? So precious, so kind. And then Brother Carl Barnell, who was the secretary at that time of Global Missions, he was just precious, helpful. Brother Albert Foster, our business administrator from the UPC of Canada, living in BC, just a precious man. He was the one that really pulled it through from the insurance, that they covered that cost of $100,000 to bring me home. It was just a miracle.
Yes.
And then Brother Francis Mason, he is, of course, a Canadian member of the Global Missions Board, even to this day. And then my own family, my brother Ralph and Carol, my sister-in-law, they were so precious in communicating and doing all that they could. And of course my brother passed away about 6 years ago now. And my sister, of course, Ingeborg, and my brother-in-law, Dan Mena, and in Edmonton, just priceless, just priceless. God uses people to bless us.
Yes.
Actually, that's what God does. God uses people to bless us.
Yes.
We are His arms, His hands, and His feet. And He is so wonderful. And then it was after this that in November of 2004, I felt that it was now the will of the Lord for me to retire from foreign missions. And actually, I was officially retired in April of 2005. But I myself, I wrote the letter at the end of November 2004 and said, I feel that it's the Lord's will now that I retire from foreign missions. And so I still leave you with this scripture in Romans 8:28. And the more I read it, the richer it becomes. And it gives you increased faith in knowing that God knows where we are.
Yes.
He knows where we are. He knows what's happening. And God allows us to go through so many things just to get us into His will.
That's right.
Just to talk to us. Sometimes He lays us on that bed so He can talk to us.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're so busy in our soul with so many things that we don't think. But the Lord knows how to deal with us. Thank the Lord. And Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. The Lord bless you.